Most people believe they're in control of their choices. Slow, calm tone. But if you slow down and really watch closely, slight pause, you'll notice something uncomfortable. Lower voice slightly. Most choices aren't choices at all. Pause, they're reactions. Beat, they're habits dressed up as decisions. Slight emphasis, they're copies of what everyone else is doing. Flowing tone, repeated so often that they start to feel original. Pause, people say they're waiting for the right moment. Neutral tone, they say they're thinking things through. They say they're being careful. Slight build-up, but in reality, they're just delaying. Firm tone, following. Echoing patterns they never consciously created. Slow emphasis, and they call that decision-making. Pause. But here's the truth most people never sit with long enough. Serious tone. The direction of your life is not controlled by your intelligence, your connections, or even your timing. Steady rhythm. It's shaped by the quality of your decisions. Emphasis, not the big dramatic ones you announce to the world, slight rise, but the small, quiet ones you barely notice. Soft tone, the ones that feel insignificant in the moment. Pause, the ones that seem like they don't matter. Slow, until one day you look back and realize that was the exact moment everything changed. Deep emphasis plus pause. What's strange is that most people are making these decisions from the lowest level of thinking, thoughtful tone, and they don't even know there are higher levels available. Slight curiosity, they assume this is just how thinking works. They assume everyone operates the same way. Pause. A long time ago, a political thinker spent years observing human behavior. Storytelling tone. He watched powerful people rise and fall. Steady. He saw individuals with every advantage collapse under pressure, and others with almost nothing build something that lasted. Contrast emphasis, and over time, he noticed a pattern that repeated itself again and again. Slow. It wasn't about who had more knowledge. Firm. It wasn't about who had better resources. Repeat emphasis. It was about who could think more clearly when things were uncertain. Strong emphasis. That's the real divide. Pause, low tone. It shows up when you don't have a clear answer. Slow pacing, when there's risk involved. When the outcome isn't guaranteed. When things could go either way and you still have to move. Build tension. That's where lives start to separate. Pause. Some people move forward. Firm. Others stay stuck in the same cycle, repeating the same patterns year after year, wondering why nothing changes. Slightly faster, reflective. There are different levels to how people think through decisions. Informative tone, and where you're on that scale is quietly shaping everything. Emphasis, your money, your relationships, your opportunities, your future. Rhythmic delivery. Most people never realize this latter even exists. Soft, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. Pause. The first level is the most common. Neutral. It's where people operate without realizing it. This is the level of repetition. Slight emphasis. At this level, nothing is truly chosen. Slow. Everything is carried forward from the past. You wake up and move through the same routines. You respond to problems the same way you always have. You hold the same opinions, follow the same habits, spend money the same way, think the same thoughts. Flow, slightly faster. Not because you evaluated them. Firm. Not because you decided they were still right, but because they're familiar. Pause. And familiar feels safe. Soft, slower. Your mind is designed to save energy. Informative tone. Thinking deeply takes effort. So instead, it reuses patterns it already knows. It runs yesterday's script again today. Steady. That works fine for simple things. Neutral. But when that same autopilot controls major areas of your life, it becomes a trap. Emphasis, because the world doesn't stand still. Firm, slow, everything changes. Opportunities shift. Environments evolve. Rhythmic. And if your decisions stay frozen while everything else moves, you slowly fall behind without even realizing it. Calm but serious. It's not dramatic. Pause, it's quiet. Soft. It looks like staying in a job you don't like, not because you chose it, but because leaving would require a decision. Illustrative tone. It looks like repeating the same financial habits year after year without questioning them. It looks like reacting to life instead of shaping it. Flow. It feels like living. Pause. But it's really just old choices playing on a loop. Deep tone. The moment you become aware of that pattern, something shifts. Hopeful tone. Even noticing it is a step most people never take. Slight lift. Then comes the next level. Transition pause. This is where people wake up just enough to realize something needs to change. Engaging tone. They start looking around. They begin paying attention to others who seem to be doing better. Slight curiosity, and naturally, they copy. Short pause. They follow what looks successful. They imitate routines, strategies, lifestyles. They think if something worked for someone else, it should work for them too. Flow. And to be fair, this is progress. Balanced tone. At least now, they're not completely unconscious. They're trying to improve. They're learning from the outside world. Steady. But there's a hidden flaw in imitation. Slight emphasis. Every successful outcome is built inside a specific situation. Clear tone, a unique combination of timing, resources, skills, connections, and circumstances. When you copy the visible action but ignore the invisible context, you're not actually making the same decision. Explanatory. You're copying the surface, not the structure. Pause. Someone might succeed in one field because of years of experience, relationships, and timing you don't see. Another person might follow the same steps and get completely different results. Contrast. From the outside, the actions look identical. Pause. But they're not. Firm. And there's another issue. When you follow what everyone else is doing, you place yourself exactly where everyone else is, in the most crowded space possible. Slight intensity. You're not ahead. You're just part of the crowd. Pause. Real progress usually looks different. It doesn't always match what's popular or obvious. It comes from understanding your own situation, not borrowing someone else's answers. Clear tone. Imitation feels safe because you can point to proof. You can say, it worked for them. Natural tone. But that doesn't mean it was right for you. Firm pause. Then comes a level that feels more serious, more thoughtful, more intelligent. Build tone. This is where people start gathering information. Neutral. They research. They read. They watch videos. They ask questions. They collect data from every direction before making a move. Flow. And this is genuinely better. Slight approval. You avoid obvious mistakes. You understand more. You approach situations with more awareness. Steady. But there's a point where this stops helping. Pause. Because information has a limit. Firm. At first, it brings clarity. But after a certain point, it starts doing the opposite. It creates noise, conflicting opinions, endless variables, more complexity than direction. Slightly faster. You know more, but you feel less certain. Pause. And this is where people get stuck. Serious tone. They keep researching, keep learning, keep preparing, but they never decide. Rhythmic. It feels productive. It feels responsible. But often, it's just avoidance in disguise. Firm. Because making a decision is uncomfortable. Slow. Research feels safe. It delays the moment you have to commit. It gives you a reason to wait. Explaining tone. But perfect information doesn't exist. Pause. There will always be unknowns. There will always be risks. Steady. At some point, the real question isn't, do I know everything? It becomes, do I know enough to move? Emphasis. That shift changes everything. Pause. Because the next level isn't about knowing more. It's about seeing clearly. Clear tone. At this stage, you stop searching for the perfect option. You accept something most people resist. Slow. Every choice has a cost. Firm. There is no path without trade-offs. No decision that gives you everything without taking something in return. Steady. And once you truly understand that, your thinking sharpens. Slight lift. Instead of asking what you gain, you start asking what you're giving up. Emphasis. Every yes is also a no. Pause. When you choose one direction, you close off others. When you commit time to something, that time disappears from everything else you could have done. Flow. A job is not just income. It's time, energy, attention. A financial decision is not just access. It's future limitation. A relationship is not just connection. It's commitment that shapes your life in ways you can't always predict. Measure tone. When you see decisions this way, two things happen. Pause. You stop waiting for perfection because you understand it doesn't exist. Firm. And you regret less because you made the choice with awareness. Calm. You knew the cost. You accepted it. Slow. Then your thinking evolves again. Transition. Now you stop asking whether something will work. Firm. Because that question is flawed. Pause. Nothing is guaranteed. Slow. Instead, you begin asking something far more useful. Build. How likely is this to work? Emphasis. This small shift changes how you see everything. Steady. You move from certainty to probability. Clear. You start evaluating chances instead of chasing guarantees. You look at your situation, your skills, your timing, and you make a judgment based on reality, not hope. Flow. You understand that even good decisions can lead to bad outcomes sometimes. Calm. And that doesn't make them bad decisions. Firm. It just means you're operating in a world where uncertainty is part of the game. Explanatory. This way of thinking removes fear. Soft. Because you're no longer expecting perfection. You're making calculated moves. Steady. And finally, there's a level most people never reach. Pause. This is where thinking stretches beyond the immediate. Slow. You don't just look at what happens next. Pause. You look at what happens after that. Slight emphasis. And after that, pause. You follow decisions forward through time, watching how they unfold. Visual tone. A choice that looks easy now might lead to long-term difficulty. A choice that feels hard now might create long-term freedom. Contrast. When you think this way, short-term comfort loses its power over you. Firm. You begin to see patterns others miss. Slight lift. You see where paths actually lead, not just where they start. Emphasis. And once you start thinking like this, everything changes. Pause. Because now you're not reacting to life. Firm. You're shaping it. Strong. One decision at a time. Slow. And those decisions, repeated over days, months, and years, quietly build the life you end up living. Flow. You don't notice it immediately. Soft. But over time, the difference becomes impossible to ignore. Build. Two people can start in the same place, with the same opportunities, the same resources. Steady. But if one of them thinks deeper, decides better, and follows decisions further into the future, their paths will slowly separate. Calm emphasis. Not because of luck. Pause. Because of how they chose. Firm. And here's the part that matters most. Serious. You don't need perfect thinking to start. Gentle. You just need better thinking than yesterday. Uplifting tone. Because thinking improves the same way anything else does. Steady. Through use. Pause. Through awareness. Pause. Through decisions made with intention instead of habit. Emphasis. You're going to make decisions today. Direct tone. You don't get to avoid that. Firm. What you can change is how you make them. Calm. And over time, that changes everything. Final slow emphasis.